What's going on, everybody? It's ETA Prime back here again. Today we're going to be taking a look at the all-new AYANEO AG01. And when it comes to AYANEO, we do know that most of the time when we're talking about this company, it's going to be a handheld. They've also hit the mini PC scene. But what we've got here is their brand new Starship graphics dock. This is one that I've been excited about, mainly because of the overall design. We really haven't seen anything like this. They're calling it the Starship graphics dock because of the design itself. I mean, it definitely looks a little off the wall, but I kind of like it. This thing supports USB 4 and OCULINK, so it goes right along with a lot of the mini PCs and handhelds out there on the market to really up that GPU performance. And inside of the box, along with the dock itself, we get an AYANEO branded USB 4 cable, an AYANEO branded OCULINK cable, and a 330 watt power supply. The dock itself will support up to 100 watt PD charging over USB 4 here. So while it's plugged into your handheld that supports Thunderbolt or USB, it's going to keep that battery topped off. And not to mention, a lot of the newer mini PCs in the market do support powering them up over USB 4, so having up to 100 watts here is more than enough for most of them right now. You can just have that single power supply plugged into the wall and the mini PC plugged in over USB 4 to the dock itself to get that thing powered up. Again, I do like the overall design. We've got a ton of I/O. It also supports an M.2 SSD down here on the bottom, so adding extra storage to whatever device you have plugged in is super easy. And speaking of I/O, over here on this side, we've got two full-size display ports, two full-size HDMI ports, OCULINK, USB 4, power in, Ethernet, and a full-size USB 3 port. It also has a full-size SD card reader over on the side. We'll take a look at that in just a second. But up top here, we've got our power switch / mode switch. This actually supports two modes, 100 watt and 120. So we can send up to 120 watts to that RX 7600 MXT to get a little extra out of it. And down here on the bottom, we've got this hatch door. We can add an M.2 SSD. And over here on this side, covered up with a rubber strip, we've got a full-size SD card reader. Lots of ventilation over here, and they came up with a brand new cooling system for this 7600 MXT. It's specific to this dock. And obviously, since this dock has USB 4, it can be used with a lot of different handhelds or mini PCs, but personally, I'm more interested in the OCULINK performance here. So if you wanted to connect this to something with USB 4, Thunderbolt 3, or Thunderbolt 4, you're going to have a really good time with it. But in order to get the maximum performance out of these external GPUs, OCULINK is definitely where it's at. OCULINK will do up to 63 gigs as opposed to USB 4's theoretical 40. So for this video, my test bed is going to be this Minisforum UM890 Pro mini PC. It's got OCULINK and it's powered by the Ryzen 9 8945HS. It's actually a really powerful little mini PC, and this will kind of give us an idea of exactly what this dock can do. Setting the graphics dock up is super easy, whether you want to use OCULINK or USB 4. Now, OCULINK is strictly going to be for video. This is going to transfer the signal over. Now we've got that RX 7600 MXT connected. In order to access the M.2 slot, you will also need USB. Now, if you're using a handheld that only has USB 4, that's fine. It's going to make a connection automatically and you'll have that extra storage. But with this, since I want to go the OCULINK route, I'm also going to need that USB cable plugged in. And while having both of these plugged in, it's automatically going to default to OCULINK, so the fastest connection there. So don't worry about that. You're not going to be running over USB 4, getting a little less performance. But yeah, I mean, with OCULINK here, this thing should perform really well. And by the way, I've installed a 1TB PCIe 3.0 M.2 SSD in the dock. So I've got everything connected. We'll go ahead and power the dock on. And up here, we've got a little bit of RGB. We can go from 100 watt to 120. We'll power on the mini PC, give it a few seconds. Video signal is going to be sent from the graphics dock to the monitor. Once we're into Windows here, you can see from Task Manager, we've now got that Radeon RX 7600 MXT instead of the 780M iGPU that comes along with the APU in this thing. So far, everything's been working really well, but doing a bit of testing here, and in order to get a better look at everything, I'm going to plug this into my game capture. So like I mentioned, the mini PC we're using here is powered by the Ryzen 9 8945HS. With this, we get those 8 cores, 16 threads. We've got 32 gigs of DDR5 at 5600. And of course, we've got the AYANEO dock connected, and that's using the AMD Radeon RX 7600 MXT with 8 gigs of GDDR6. Right now, I've actually disabled the 780M graphics just so everything we use here is going to be relying directly on this external GPU connected over OCULINK. I've also installed a 1TB M.2 SSD inside of the dock so we could do some speed testing there. But real quick, wanted to show you, as you can see, PCIe X8 4.0, and we'll just run this. It's only running at X4 4.0. That's what we get with OCULINK here. But I mean, we're still getting plenty of power out of this GPU. Right now, we're not in performance mode. We've got that switch up top. And to show you the difference here, I've got FurMark, and right here, we've got our GPU power. So 100 watts in regular mode. But as soon as we flip the switch on the eGPU, it'll go right up to 120. I do want to mention that I'm going to be in performance mode the whole time. I want to get as much as possible. So we will be in that 120 watt mode with the eGPU. But the first thing I did here was run a couple benchmarks. So let's go ahead and take a look at those, and then we'll get right into some gaming. I just used 3D Mark here. Steel Nomad coming in with a 2188, and this is their newest benchmark. Definitely looking pretty good so far. I also ran TimeSpy, and we got a really respectable 10,168. And the last thing I did here was run a speed test on that M.2 SSD. And remember, that SSD is going to be working over USB, but we're getting some really good speeds here. I mean, compared to an SD card, it's really hard to compare something like this because it is much, much faster. So being able to add that extra storage while you're in dock mode is really awesome. But now I wanted to get into some gaming performance, and like I mentioned, we are in performance mode on the dock, so up to 120 watts. Horizon Zero Dawn Remastered, 1440p, very high, and with the RX 7600 MXT, we're right there on the edge. I do see it dip down under 60 every once in a while, but we do have some technologies here with this game that'll allow us to get much higher with those same settings, AMD's Frame Gen. So here it is at 1440p, very high. Only thing I did here was turn on Frame Gen, and now we're seeing an average of 89 FPS. Moving over to my favorite arcade racer, Forza Horizon 5, 1440p Ultra. We don't need any kind of scaling here with this. In fact, I know that the RX 7600 MXT will do this at 4K Ultra at around an average of 72 FPS. So if you did want to play this at 4K, shouldn't be an issue for this GPU dock. Here's Cyberpunk 2077 at 1440p, ultra settings with FSR set to balance. AMD doesn't state that the 7600 MXT is a 1440p card. I consider it 1440p high or with some scaling, or a 1080 Ultra card, but for the most part, I'm always trying to go up to 1440p, and as you can see with Cyberpunk 2077, it's definitely possible. We're seeing an average of around 68 FPS. Esports games with a setup like this are going to work out great. You want to do some Fortnite, some Dota, or even Overwatch 2. 1440p Ultra, no scaling. By the end of this, I was getting an average of 171 FPS. I also wanted to run the built-in benchmark for Shadow of the Tomb Raider. 1440p, highest settings, no scaling, got an average of 83 FPS, fully playable like this. And another one I ran here was Black Myth Wukong. This is one of those games that does kind of give this GPU a run for its money, but with Frame Gen enabled, at high settings, 50% resolution scale, we got an average of 101. And the final game I tested here was God of War Ragnarok, 1440p high with FSR set to balanced. I was really hoping that I could do Ultra with this, but even with FSR set to balanced, it did dip under 60. That jump with this game is pretty dramatic from high to ultra, but again, with a newer game like this, we do have frame gen, so if you wanted to use it, you definitely could. So overall, I really do like the design that AYANEO has come up with for this eGPU dock. It's definitely off the wall, and that's something I like to see. Mainly when we get these GPU docks, they're just plain boxes. This thing does look pretty awesome. And you know, if you're interested in seeing a video strictly over USB 4, let me know in the comments, and also let me know what handheld you want to see paired up with this device. But so far, over OCULINK, seeing some awesome performance out of the graphic Starship from AYANEO. And if you're interested in learning a little more, I will leave links to their official website down below. But that's going to wrap it up for this first look video. Again, if you're interested in seeing the performance over USB 4, let me know in the comments. Like always, thanks for watching.